are you indicating that's my responsibility? I would accept no responsibility whatsoever.
Then, now, forever, together.
Damn, shout out. We made it. We made it. Actually, let me get a proper good job to the Black Rasslin crew for making a plan. Well, again, I mentioned this. I probably mentioned this on the pod. I definitely mentioned in the first episode of this docuseries, no cap recap of Mr. McMahon. That we were like, yeah, it's probably gonna be cool to just do like a conversation about the whole docuseries or whatever. But the way that so much information and so much history and so many different conversations can spiral out, that it probably made sense to do one for each episode, and we did it. So shouts to y'all. Appreciate y'all for rocking with us. Appreciate y'all. Shouts out me. Shouts out fam. Dat math.
Shout out to you.
Hey, you know what we do. You know what we gotta do. Appreciate you. Appreciate y'all. Episode 6, the finish. It I was so confused when he was talking about. I think it was right in the cold open of the episode. He's talking about having 3 computers in his head, and he said. The quote, I have computers in my head and sometimes they work against me. And the dude, because he's talking about, how he's managing everything. The guy was like, what's going on with one of them right now? And he's like, what are you thinking about in one of them right now? He's like, it's a lot of fun and it involves sex. And I'm like, Jesus Christ. Like, why do you have to say that? Like, well,
that's because he knows he's brazen.
Yeah, I think the nigga he don't have ain't no fear.
No fear.
He for what? Who do I have to answer to? I haven't had a boss in 40, 50 years.
Facts.
You know what I'm saying?
This family run business like he always used to tell against Ted Turner.
You know what I'm saying? I got it out of the mud, and I could make another one if I wanted to. And that's really what his thought is. So, you know what I'm saying? Do what you do. It don't matter. I'm still, at the end of it, I'm still Vince McMahon.
That's right.
Vince McMahon.
And you're going to still talk about me. Even, wasn't there a storyline where he was in church and him versus God? Like, if you think that that's okay.
Right.
And you have, like, every single storyline that he was involved in with Mr. McMahon, he was telling us who he was.
He was letting you. Well, is this the episode where they asked all them how different Vince McMahon and Mr. McMahon was? And
no,
a lot of
this is what is his legacy?
No, because I think there was one, and a lot of them were because there were a lot of questions. It may not have been this one.
Yeah.
It was. Yeah, they were like everybody was kind of like, that's him.
That's him.
That's him.
Except
right
for
there.
one person. It was this is him. Not far. Or it's
Even
probably
Pritchard
him.
said it was him.
Yes.
Right. It was him turned up a notch.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah, it's just him on 10 or whatever the hell you want to call it. Yeah, the computer shit cracked me the hell up. This was what cracks me up is I think, not to say like I was getting more invested like when I was watching pro wrestling at this time. I remember this Trump. I don't think I was buying WrestleManias at the time, but I was definitely following the news because The Apprentice was definitely already a thing, and just being invested in like pop culture news, the way that pro wrestling was being covered with this, it was turned all. They said that was one of that WrestleMania has one of them damn view stats or gate stats or something like that. I forget the exact number that they mentioned in the doc, but it got to the point where WWE stock was falling into situations because Vince McMahon had in storyline given up power to Donald Trump, and the stockholders didn't believe that Trump could handle the company the way. So like those type of real world implications was crazy.
Yeah.
It's
saw it play out years later.
And then it literally saw it play out years later. They the one thing they didn't touch on, and I'm glad me and Brother Fan were talking about this before we started recording today. They didn't mention anything about Durag Vince, which was after if you remember correctly, that WrestleMania, Bobby Lashley was representing Donald Trump in a match against Umaga, who was representing Vince McMahon. And after Vince McMahon lost that match and had to get his head shaved, he not too long after, he won the ECW World Championship and was walking around in a do-rag.
Hey, shout out to the granddaddy church hats that he was wearing beforehand. Before, like, he'd come down and you could tell he had just slapped the hat on.
Yeah. Give me that damn hat. Give me that hat.
Come here, MVP.
Gotta cut a promo. This is the worst Vince ever. Anyway, didn't get into that at all. So, and there's
pork pie hat, nigga.
If anybody can figure out who in the back told Vince to rock a Dewey, hit up Brother Fam at IlFam79 on your social media choice. I am glad that they mentioned, I guess they had to mention, this is actually one of the never completed pro wrestling storylines that sticks out right in front of my brain. That week before the Monday before the Chris Benoit murder-suicide was the Monday in Wilkes-Barre, Pennsylvania, where Vince was in that limo and the limo blew up.
So that goes back to booking anything for anybody. Yeah. He's like, nigga, I will blow myself up.
I'ma die
in a limo. So nigga, you can go out there and take a goddamn fault.
Yeah.
I blew up.
Yeah.
Like Ernest.
What he said, that's the creative way of him saying, if you're not willing to take this knife and plunge it into my body to take my company from me, then you're really not brolic like that. You can't be brolic like that. But of course they had to transition from that storyline into the Chris Benoit situation, which then got into a whole lot of talk about both Brett and Vince were like adamant that it wasn't roid rage. Like they were like firm.
And Stephen Williams.
He said he was very clear on the CTE. He doesn't believe in CTE, not the roid rage.
And Vincent Hogan did not.
He said, "Hey, look, I don't believe it."
Yeah.
You don't have to say it like that.
When they started talking about concussions, both Vince and Hogan were like, "Nah, bro. I know he does this move off the top rope, but it's a work. They're working." And then what? Because there were two more points. Vince was talking about how they removed moves from the so it everything's a work. And none of that had any issues, but we're gonna make sure that
is what I'm talking about.
We're gonna make sure we take these moves off.
Nothing ever happened, but I settled.
Right.
These, like all the sexual allegation suits, he settled, but I never did anything.
Nothing happened.
Yeah, that is him in his mind falling on a sword. Right. I'll pay this money so that I can be the shield.
Right.
Protect everybody else, and that some of this stuff, I mean, is true. And true narcissism is you believe
That's right. That's right.
I think that's the thing. I think Vince only will say that he's different from the character to be able to separate himself from the things he ended up putting out, like the stuff that. He's got to separate it to believe the BS.
Facts. Yeah. Well, and that's probably. Damn. I'm just thinking about it. And I mentioned it earlier, him talking about the 3 computers. I mean, he's a kid, he's a child that they've not really got into it. He suffered trauma. He was abused multiple ways. I'm not sitting, and again, I'm not diagnosing. But I mean, I've heard situations
it's
of people, multiple personality disorder, and like a lot
That's
of
right.
the time that can be stemmed from specific traumatic events in life, and talking about having 3 different types of mentalities or computers going on, where one seems to have pornos on all the time, the one is obviously booking wrestling, and I don't know what the third one would be doing, but trying to figure out TV from 6 months. I don't know, but it sounds very similar to some of those instances, and it makes it sound again what the thing I keep hitting on him talking about overcoming adversity. His way to deal with it a lot of time is kind of just like don't.
Right, exactly. And he said he said a couple of things the same thing a couple of times in different ways. He's just like, I don't believe that what happens to you defines you, but yet he acts the way he acts, and he treats women the way he treats women because it defines you. There was another piece where he said, he was stealing. He was basically siphoning talent from other promotions.
Right.
And then when WCW that was breaking them in the thing, and they were kind of like siphoning talent. Oh, how do you do that?
Right.
You're eating at somebody's, you're taking away from somebody's plate. And I'm just like, okay, it's okay if you do it, but it's not okay if somebody else do it. Like, what?
Is that a rap song?
Make it make sense. Yeah.
Is that a rap song? Sorry, when you do it. They do it.
Exactly. It's like, what? Like, he literally believes the bullshit that he says.
He believes his own
like, I didn't, he just went crazy. And, that's what happens. He makes everything so matter-of-factly in that this is just the way of life. He decided to kill his whole family. What?
He explains everything away in like very short sentences. Yeah.
Like, it's none of his business. And then when you keep pounding it, you want to smack your papers and sit up and try to flex on you. You know what I mean? Like, it's weird. It's weird. He was a gaslighter. He is a gaslighter. Even with never selling the company and saying that you gotta kill him, but yet you just took a check. You took a check. Yes. My dude, like, stop,
Calm down.
Calm down.
No, well, he took that check when he thought he could sell it and still keep control of it.
Yeah,
right.
And then ended up
godlike complex.
Pushed out. Oh yeah,
they said, "Oh no,
textbook narcissist."
That's what happens. That's what happens. Well, Meltzer said that after there's a certain situations like when he stepped down and came back, and he was like still on the board and was on TV and whatnot.
That
and
was
Meltzer,
so brazen when he showed up on SmackDown.
Meltzer said that was his big fuck you. Like, he was doing that on purpose to be like, hey, I know my names, and the fact that they would do that knowing full well that because the story dropped that Friday and SmackDown is on Friday, people are going to be tapped into that show to see what was going on. So why not go out there and jump down the steps and shit and pop a fucking
like you was about to say something. Like you was about to. We was all like, "What's he about to say? What's he about?"
We're still here. Fucking let's go watch the show. That was it. Like, he wasn't talking about nothing. Like,
I said, "Oh my god."
They again, and just watching the documentary at this point, I like looking at what was there and what wasn't there, and remembering.
I thought you was about to say you like porn.
No, Jesus Christ, no. I was gonna say I was going to say I like pointing these things out, but I don't like pointing these things out. But I do. It's like they were talking about the women's evolution, right?
Yes.
And
way before when it actually happened.
I remember watching, and I remember the women on the roster being dope. But then I also, and this is the key here, I remember seeing Triple H and Steph McMahon going to them UFCs and taking them photos with Ronda Rousey. And then they would talk about Ronda Rousey being one of the driving factors for them to really want to invest in this women's evolution. Guess who wasn't in that documentary? Didn't even mention her. I wonder why. Was it because she had all these comments to say about Vince McMahon about a month and a half ago? Fuck him. He be putting people on the casting couch and shit. Like, it again. It's
ain't
like I was
putting no Ronda Rousey on. Cause we saw what your face looked like.
But what I'm saying is,
I don't like to hear.
I don't like hearing her talk either.
About wrestling. Period. Like,
period. Period.
I think like that. All I'm saying is, like I said, a couple of no cap recaps back. This part of what's going on here is them establishing that
Where
narrative.
things, yeah.
Because Netflix is owned by a lot of people. A lot of WWE fans is really about to be tapped into Netflix, especially if they live overseas. This is a fact that this is kind of like the article of how Vince took over the pro wrestling world and took over American pro wrestling. A lot of people are going to be referencing this when they're telling that story, not now, but in like 20, 30 years. They're going to go, that's what they're going to go back to. And that is going to be, what is it? The history is written by the winners. Like that's the storyline. It may get abridged in the future. There was times when Bruno Sammartino wasn't cool with WWE, so he wasn't in any of the plans, and then he got worked back in. Maybe if her beef is with Vince and his crew and they're gone, Triple H and Steph seemed like they was cool with her. They may rewrite that story in the future, is all I'm saying. But
what's interesting is, at the end, Pritchard said, "Oh, this whole thing was made to make him look bad." There was no narrative. There was no narration.
No.
There was no narration. He was telling his own story.
Exactly.
So what are we talking about? You know what I mean?
Yep.
He was telling his own story with other people giving their input. Nothing in this thing made me feel like this was a narrative by somebody else.
Right. Right.
So
Vince McMahon telling the Vince McMahon story.
Yeah, that's what it was. And he told us who he was.
Yeah. And he been
in his own words.
There wasn't no dunking. They did not dunk on Vince. I think Pritchard's problem is he dealt with Vince in a vacuum.
Yes.
Right? And having to witness who he is outside of it hurts. Yeah. Right?
Yeah.
And I keep saying your attachment is to how he made you feel directly. Right. It's hard like to deal with a nigga that help you save your people's life.
That's
and
right.
then do something rotten. But the fact is, rotten people do good things from time to time.
That's right. You can see it with Taker. Taker, you can see Taker knows what it is and how he felt at the time, to your point, but he knows he got a wife that probably dealt with some shit that he had no clue maybe at the time, and he hates to have to admit that his whole 30-year career, it's like seeing your idol to like fall,
But he's seen it though. Yeah, the man but he'd seen it. Like, I think we have to remember that Taker was the guy. And for a while he ended up being the oldest guy, the actual vet in the locker room. B, for him and a lot of people, they weren't seeing success until they got to WWE. Even if that meant he had to be some Wild West fucking mortician or whatever, building pine boxes and whatnot. Right. But the C is, because of those two and sticking by Vince, that man is set for life. He's got a contract right now where he is set for life with them. He signed to them. So I was going to say, I know a lot of people aren't like us and understand what loyalty is, but like there's some people that because of that stuff, they're going to stay with that person no matter what, because they feel like they took them to a certain level when they they could have been somebody else entirely. So
yeah.
I was going to say.
Yeah, no, you can draw a direct line from certain people. Hogan, Taker specifically, they are two of three amazing or huge benefactors of Vince's booking.
Right.
Like there are no one was booked like Hogan. No one was booked like Taker is a legend. Taker and Hogan are legends in professional wrestling 100% because of Vince McMahon's booking. If Vince McMahon's booking went elsewhere,
you would not.
We wouldn't care.
Right.
We would not care. And listen, that being the case, it's always going to be hard for those folks to be like 100% out. I mean, listen, even when Hogan was down with a whole nother set and he was over WCW and they put him in court, that nigga at the end of the day,
he still took care of his
man against the goddamn government.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Listen, that's their daddy. That's a lot of these niggas. You know what I'm saying?
Shane McMahon couldn't even hug his daddy till he had to fall off the hell in the cell.
Everybody else got hugged before him.
Yeah, how about that?
Boy, them niggas jumped off the cells early.
But and the funny thing is even though, because we say all this about why Taker would feel the type of way about Vince McMahon, Vince was still the one when they talked, because they talked about the streak. I thought it was kind of interesting. They talked about the streak here, and said Taker didn't know till, like, I believe he said that day or the day before or something like that, that he was going to lose. And I mean, he seemed fine. Like, they didn't really sound like he sounded like he was okay with it, but he was talking about how he blacked out and he doesn't remember a lot of that. And Vince,
even concussions, however,
Vince said,
I had a concussion.
Exactly. But Vince still thought that's work. He said no, he don't remember because it was traumatic to him, which is which is interesting to me.
Gaslight. Vince left WrestleMania.
Yeah.
Vince left WrestleMania for this concussion that he didn't believe in.
They went to there was a whole story about that, leaving that, man. He said that shit was too traumatic. He said he was too tired. He didn't want to lose the streak, so that's why he don't remember the match.
That's it. That's fucking disrespectful to that person.
And I'll take a bullet for him. I will take a bullet for him.
Rough,
and Taker, he said, if I could still do it, I'd be doing it right now.
We believe you. Because we saw that last match.
Well, he said, I think there was a quote recently with Taker. He said if he was to come back and do one more match, I believe it was something with Shawn Michaels or something like that, but I forget what the specifics was, but it's because of that Saudi tag match that they had however many years ago. It was Taker and Kane versus Trips and HBK, that they was throwing around the patio chairs at each other and shit. Yeah, that was a terrible. It's funny. I never forget because I missed that match because I was at Morgan State's homecoming. I'll never forget that. I was drunk watching that one, and that shit was awful. I missed Bad Blood for the same reason. Damn. Oh my God, Bad Blood.
I think each person that was interviewed was handpicked.
Yeah, there was definitely. Again, like, even talking about the women's evolution and stuff, I was like, is there anybody from like the new school going to be able to have like a voice? And there wasn't. It seemed like there was
not even one
specific people chosen.
Who would y'all say? I don't know. Like, if I
who'd be good on a documentary right now? I
think they talk to all big dogs. I think that's what it looked like to me. Is
Cody? There was no Roman. There was no Roman whatsoever.
I think that was very specific.
Yeah, that's what I'm. Yeah,
I say, listen, because that's the third person that I didn't mention earlier that benefits from great booking is that they didn't want to scar Roman up with the BS of episode 6. Everybody else that they really dug into, because even they really kept it light with talking to Cody, but the people that they really dug into are people that are who they are regardless moving forward. You don't. Don't leave, bro. If I was wrong, nigga, leave me out of that. What y'all doing?
But they could have done maybe there could have been a 7 and 8th episode where they talked about booking. I think that would have been a good based off of tagging on to what you're saying, fam. Like, to talk about those people that actually benefited from these types of things and who they tried to push but didn't really get it.
It really does put a time frame on this too, because there's like no bloodline at all in this, huh?
This kind of a thought that I had earlier when we were talking is that,
but I don't think that was his booking.
Right. It's like the pacing of this is when it's a failure for Vince. Like, the pacing, it speeds up, right? But I also think that people who win in life don't live in those losses, right? So Vince,
That's what he said.
dealt with it that way. It's just like, all right, well, I lost. Here's
Move
the
on.
new thing.
What's next?
So then the pacing of that episode matches who Vince is,
Right?
because you don't talk about those failures. And I pitched the gobbledygooker and the goon and the goddamn the lesbians. Like, I did a lot of wild booking that didn't work, right? But nobody cares about those folks. They're cool footnotes, but I didn't feel a way about those people. I feel a way about Hogan and Stone Cold and goddamn The Rock and all these huge
Batista
folks.
wasn't even in it. I was like, what?
Yeah. Well, I also imagine too. I think.
Yeah.
You got.
I think he picked those people specifically.
But I think the person that's missing, if anyone's specifically missing, who I would have loved a little more insight from, would be a nigga that is also semi-problematic, but Ric Flair.
Flair would.
But also, Flair wasn't a Vince creation.
Flair wasn't a Vince creation. I also want. I don't know what Flair's interview is. Like, I don't know how in depth or like Flair feels like he could be very kayfabe in a situation like this. Still,
of course, he would always protect.
Because he's from that.
Yeah, he's from that era.
Behind me. I am not gonna let y'all mess up Kay.
The one person that you never hear from that I kind of wish could have been in this, but now I know, because I would also assume this person probably knows more than anybody else. Kevin Dunn. Like, that's one. Like, we didn't get into
producers. He won't get part of it. He won't be a part of it.
We won't. But this is the stuff. This is the stuff I'm talking about. Like if I was going to remix it. Like, if you're talking about the voices and stuff that you didn't hear, or whatever stuff you would have gotten more of, especially in regards to, like, because they talk about Vince being a revolutionary and like the things he's done, but they didn't really get in. They didn't even get into really like how innovative the stuff from the XFL was pushing out into the rest of culture. You know, they didn't spend a lot of time on that stuff. So, and that's the thing. Like, I at the end of the day, you have to remember that there's a certain, when Vince and WWE say we're going to agree to do this docuseries, there's a conversation more than likely of, here's what we want to talk about. All right, well, we're going to talk about these things. And you have to meet in the middle. And
there was probably pen to paper on certain things that they couldn't discuss. I'm sure of it.
And you got, and when you think about when Vince could have seen an early cut, that could have been an early cut of an episode to get a proof or approval of things that were in there or not in there. We don't know what he's referring to when he said they was going to do the smear campaign or whatever the hell he said, but depending on the time when he still could have been there to see one of those, you know what I'm saying? Those are things that happen. At a certain point, they're going to have to watch every episode. They're going to have to come back with notes. It may even be a fraction of a second. You can't show this because this little kid, or, you know, this is copyright over here, whatever. Like, they have to go with a fine tooth comb for a lot of this stuff. So and then you have to remember that they only had so many conversations with Vince, and Vince is only going to talk about so much. So, you know, Mimi remember to mention a Batista, you know, or like, you know, Chris Jericho, or like whatever names people thought could have been a part of this. Like, if he didn't mention, if there was no conversation about that stuff, and it may feel excess to what the timeline and them trying to do 50 some minutes an episode and everything that ties into that, all that. That's why I can't get too crazy about what could have been there that wasn't there, what wasn't said or whatever. Like, because at a certain point, I already know that it's not going to be what I think it should be when I'm thinking about what this is going to what's going to happen on this doc.
We also talked about
NXT. I feel like NXT should have been, because that product did not belong to Triple H. Right?
They didn't mention that at all.
They didn't mention that at all, and so I think, going back to what you said earlier, that there has to be an abridged version of this. It might have to be after he's all said and done. But I think the real story, the true story, is going to be longer than 8 episodes.
See, I think like with NXT, that nigga didn't want to be involved in NXT until he felt like there was that pissing contest with him and Triple H. And when Triple H is doing something different, he came down and made Rainbow NXT, and niggas stopped caring. It was a whole thing. But I think that's another case of it wasn't on Vince's radar, right? When he's telling stories and they're
when he's not
asking him
talking
questions,
about it, yeah.
he's not answering with, oh, and then when NXT. I don't know if that was ever Vince's like baby. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like,
not baby, but it's still his product. Because remember, he said
it was
in
a
the
offspring.
like
You
all
said?
these things that you keep talking about, that's my belt, not your belt. You're just holding on to, like. So I feel like every single product of that came out of the WWE WWF, he feels like he's the owner of that.
oh, of course.
And so I feel like that would have been a good part to see how that created, even if it is a Triple H type thing. And I would have loved to see how he pitched it and said, and then he okayed it. Of course he was going to okay it, but how he pitched it, how he said, okay, this is how it's going to be. Because I started watching NXT, I don't know, like
Was
in
it
the
on TV or the
middle.
network?
I think it was on TV because going onto the network, I felt like it was an extra added thing for me to do. And so
Yeah.
I was just like, huh, what's going on? And so I never watched it until it got on USA. So I would have loved to know how that came about. How they split, he decided to go over to NXT, and then, you know what I mean?
Kind of
That
separate
division
them,
started.
yeah.
Yeah, that would have been a good part of the story.
I still think that there's an element of the cheese is sliding off of Vince's crackers slowly, and
Cricket.
outstanding. I think there's a point here where like just like Vince's computers don't got the same storage they had 10 years ago, and less than it was 15 years ago, less than it was 20 years ago, and I think that is
can't reboot them.
I think that's nah. Shout out to Reboot. That was a good cartoon on ABC a long time ago.
And I will say too. I mean, shout out DDM. Also too, it's not like this is the end of the WWE and Netflix deal. We probably mapped out a 4-episode This Is NXT docuseries if you want to go FCW and whatever they were doing beforehand,
right?
Establishing NXT as a on the network, as well as like the early TV. 2.0 could be a thing, and then that in the future. You know, I mean, it's not hard to map out.
The difficult thing, and that's the one thing I don't know if we spoke about, is that there is a perfect storm of relationship with Netflix that we are in that allowed the Vince McMahon doc to get finished.
Yes,
and push forward. I think we're on the other side of it though. And what I mean is they have a relationship, right? When that TV starts, they jump in the bid for them.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
We're in a period where there's a relationship where we can make content. But you don't have any say in our content the way the Vince McMahon thing was put out, because at the end they had Final Cut XYZ.
Right.
I think now moving forward, anything WWE related would be TKO approved.
Right.
Yeah.
Forward. Yeah. And I think that's going to be tough to really get any kind of like as raw as they got, pardon the use of the term, with this. I don't think they can do that moving forward because
this was they're
about to be in the bed.
But this is the thing. Like, I think it was raw because Vince made it raw. Nobody. This wasn't narrated. It was produced, but it was produced based off of the things that were said. I think it was just like, this is what it is. Like, this is what it is. We weren't talking in the background. It was all these people that were, and this is all pieced together, and we made the disclaimers. It was just like, so you know what I mean? So I don't think they can even comment or make any suggestions or put in their 2 cents in any type of WWE programming, in my opinion. I don't think they can do that.
I'll say 2 things. One, and this is not sponsored, we also have to remember that, there was like a journalistic edge on this, because there was, Ringer Films and Bill Simmons and everything, like they wanted to make sure that it wasn't just WWE telling a story. You know what I mean? They tried to, make sure the warts were in there. But to your point, Mimi, if they don't have some outside, like, 'cause I believe the dude Chris Smith didn't really know pro wrestling, so like he's looking at it from a totally different way. If TKO is producing a, like John Cena or The Rock or whatever is producing a 4-part NXT series, that's going to look different than Ringer Films, whatever, Chris Smith produced thing, just on the simple fact that it's going to be in-house. So it's going to, there's already going to be like a set of rules and things that you can and can't say. They're going to figure out that narrative. You know what I mean? But I think on the flip side, the person that has their hands up the least is Netflix. Netflix don't care. Ask all them, ask them celebrities, them Ryan Reynolds and them Rocks and whoever was getting them big ass checks from Netflix to produce content. Netflix wants the dope name. They want the big name to draw people to buy the service. If as long as it's not too crazy to get the thing shut down, or it's not outside the parameters of what needs to be on TV. They care way less. They give these people so that Bill Simmons Ringer Films thing played a big part in trying, and not saying that Vince wasn't being raw. They didn't have a lot to work with, but they could have got bulldozed if it was somebody else entire, just some random dude at Netflix, or just some random person at WWE. Like we could have gotten a way more reduced rawness of a Mr. McMahon docuseries. Any final thoughts on this, or was that our final thoughts?
The one thing I will say, the two things that stood out that showed that Vince did things better was, Vern Gagne always said that he was the one that created Hulk Hogan, right? And while he did, Vince elevated Hulk Hogan. And then Bischoff said he played the evil manager, the evil boss first.
He said Vince got that from him.
Better, but Vince did it 1,000% better.
I thought that was really funny. I thought that was really funny because when you listen to Vince, if Vince is like, this is bullcrap, right? He will be like, yo, that's bullcrap. Specifically when he was asked about the Bischoff, well, he can say what he wants.
I still did it better.
Yeah, like that. He gave. Listen, when I was listening to Eric a lot of this joint, I was like, all right, nigga, you just keep putting yourself up. Like, you know what I mean?
Right.
Like, whatever, nigga. But when he said that, my immediate response was bull crap. Right. But then Vince replied with, well, you might have, but I did it better.
And that then Eric
felt like him admitting to stealing. Like that was Vince saying, I thought on the
and then couch. Vince, and then Eric agreed. And then Eric agreed, which I know that he's always trying to put himself over. But one thing I will say about Eric Bischoff, I don't know much about him, but the little bit that I have seen about him, he admits to certain things. Oh, yeah. You know what I mean? Like he has an honesty about what really happened and how things went down and how he didn't do things the way that he should.
For the most part.
He's
more honest than some. No, he's more honest than some. It's just and there's sometimes I've heard stories like, nah, you know you lying. You sent that fax. You know you sent that shit.
Right.
But anyway, it's
there's a scene in Harlem Nights.
Okay.
Where Jasmine Guy is talking to Michael. I can't think of his name. The guy that was the big dude, the big 12 bottles, the gangster, Bugsy Calhoun. He was talking to him, and he made a point. And I need all of you folks out there in pro wrestling land to take a line from Harlem Nights. Everybody in this business is a criminal. How can you trust a criminal? And what I'm saying is everybody, top to bottom, if they're working a punch or making up a story, everybody here in a character is a liar by definition. It's always a work, baby. Don't trust nobody.
Oh, shit. Damn, bars. On that note, peace to Mimi, peace to Brother Fam, shouts to Dap, shouts to Mouth, shouts to myself. Yeah. Peace, everybody watching, everybody subscribed over here on YouTube. Go if you want, make sure patreon.com/Black Rasslin. I'm sorry, I didn't do the watch alongs over there because we were doing this.
Hey, don't let him grab your peckle.
Be careful.
Unless it's consensual.
That's facts.
And sensual pecker grabbing is good.
That would be the name of the episode. That would be the name of the episode. All right. We'll talk to y'all soon. Peace, peace, peace.